You're listening to the Beer Mile Podcast.
All right. How do we kick this thing off?
Oh man, that's a tough question. Don't put me on the spot like that.
I'm gonna put you on the spot.
Well, usually we do like our cool intro for you. Everyone already knows who you are at this point. So I guess I don't know. It's 8 p.m. for you.
Yep. Yeah.
What is your pre-bed bedtime? Like, what do you do to get ready for bed?
My pre-bedtime routine. Okay.
Yeah.
A hell of a start, Adam.
You put me on the spot. That's what I'm gonna ask. No. That's your problem.
We'll start with the easy questions.
Yeah, start at the end of the day. I would say by like 8 p.m., 9 p.m., usually have dinner around 7. So by this time, I would say winding down a bit, just kind of finishing up some work if I have anything that I need to respond to. And then, by the time it's bed, I usually try and read or something and just be in bed by, 10:30. So I can get my 8 to 9 hours, but I wouldn't say anything too special, no.
For dinner, do you cook for yourself? Like, if you enjoy cooking? I ask because I was looking back in your Insta history and I saw something about you asking for like recommendations, 30 minutes of cooking or less.
Yeah, no, I would say I'm definitely not. But now I live by myself in Boston. So I've kind of taken it upon myself that, I have no excuses not to make meals a priority and just taking a bit more time for dinners. But I would say like maximum, I don't want to spend much more than like an hour in the kitchen. So I've been testing out a few different things, but I usually have my staples in the week. Tuesdays are always tacos. So I try to have some kind of routine there. So it just makes it a bit easier.
Do you all as a team get together at all, like on weekdays outside of running, do any dinners together, that sort of stuff? Or how much are you guys doing outside of practice time together?
I would say when we're in Boston, I mean, we're all kind of living on our own for the most part. But what I think is really neat in Flagstaff when we go for training camp, everyone takes a night of the week and you go all out on that night. You cook the meal for the team. It ends up being the best. You leave with like new ideas and inspiration. So that's awesome. That's really sort of like the team bonding in terms of, over food. On the road, I guess, you go for dinners and stuff, but, and then Les Mark, takes us out for dinner, but usually we're doing meals on our own.
Do you often get excluded because you're a Starbucks girl, not a Dunkin' girl?
Yeah, no, I've got a lot of, the team, it's Dunkin's in Boston. It is like, they feel strongly about that. And coming from Canada, Starbucks is kind of like the upgrade from Tim Hortons. So for us, it's like, anytime I'm in a bigger city, I go to Starbucks and we don't have it close to home here. So I always think that's kind of my go-to, but I do get some smack for that. Who's the most aggressive about the slack? Heather McLean. No question.
I figured.
Yeah. It's her birthday today, actually. So shout out to her. I'm sure she's
Heather.
Some Dunkin'.
So what do you order at Starbucks? Like, I'm trying to figure out if this is something that you can't get at Dunkin', or it's like just way better than what you can get at Dunkin'.
Yeah, just quality of coffee. I'm just like tall.
Oh, you're saying across the board.
Yeah, I would say across the board. Like you get a nice coffee from Dunkin', and I don't know if it was like a meme on Instagram, but like you never know what like color it's going to be. It's like ice, but then it's like half ice. And then the next time it's like actually the color of coffee.
There's no consistency. Yeah.
Right. And then it's like 10 cream and some sugars. So I like to have consistency in the drink. So, but yeah, usually I just get a blonde roast and then with cream. So that's my pre-race and post-race or just every day.
Pre-race and post-race. I've never had post-race coffee.
Depending on what time of day.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I would agree on the quality control piece of it, though. Like, I never really thought about that being kind of a deciding factor. Like, I've had an amazing concoction at Dunkin' before, like here and there, but I've also had some of the worst coffee I've ever tasted. So yeah, the consistency is the quality control is certainly not up to snuff. And compared to Starbucks, you're like always getting the same thing.
I'm a Starbucks I'm a Starbucks stan, but like there have been a few that have done me dirty recently, and I'm a little upset. Like last time I was in O'Hare, the airport coffee, who would have thought? Not good.
I don't know. Must just be the airport. Different standards in the airport. I don't know. It's probably all the same beans. They just like roasted it wrong or something. I don't know.
Who knows? Anyway, I guess where I originally wanted to start was, so right now you're currently coming back from, is it either a stress reaction or a stress fracture in your tibia?
Yeah, I would say I'm over that hump, but in May, I got an MRI and it was a stress reaction in the tibia. So first bone injury, pretty new to it all, but it took a good, yeah. So that was a month and a half of like, a month off and another month of like walk run. And then Commonwealth Games was sort of like the light at the end of the tunnel this summer.
So for like your first, I wouldn't say your first like real injury, but for first bone injury, what, I guess like walking through the recovery, where was your head at along the way? Obviously it's a lot of time off.
Yeah. I'd say you go through like kind of stages of like, you have the injury and you're like, this is not going to be an injury, like, wrong diagnosis. And then you have the diagnosis and you're like, okay, so now, I have this injury. And then they give you the 6 to 8 weeks and you're like, that's crazy. There's no way I'm going to be able to run trials. And then you get into it and you're like, okay, well, like, what can I do during this time? Like, what can I control and what is going to be effective in terms of like, moving me forward in some direction? I can't train. I'm in Flagstaff. Let's benefit from this altitude. So just kind of like an animal on the bike for a few weeks and then slowly progressed. And, I supplemented with some pool running as well. But I would say physically, I just got stronger. Like I was definitely stronger coming out of it. Fitness wise, not exactly, it doesn't hold for that long. I wouldn't say, but it was conservative. I'm happy I took the time I needed. And luckily Athletics Canada, like our national organization, like they didn't put any pressure in terms of World Outdoors. So we did what's right. And I had a great team of doctors as well. So
how would, I saw a post a while back that you had, that I think most of my questions come off of just because I find it, your development physically, like mentally, mostly, I find just like an interesting path. How would 20-year-old you have like reacted to the same injury and recovery phase?
Yeah, I probably wouldn't have handled it so well. I only had my first injury at like 21 or so. So let alone like Achilles, I think was actually worse. Bone, it heals and sometimes it heals stronger. Tendon, tissue, muscle. It's like this constant kind of fussy, like management and, you're running and, or not running. And so I would say in terms of maturity though, over the last 10 years, you get pretty good at identifying, is this an issue or is this just something that's going to be, kind of a bit tighter sore over the next few days. So with bone, I think what was clear is like, it wasn't feeling better with any sort of like massage. I this was my first injury in that sort of way. So I think it did feel sort of new. It was still something that I had to sort of like grapple with. But at this point in your career, you see that long-term approach and you're not willing to jeopardize the season for an Olympic cycle.
Yeah. So based on where it happened in the season, then I'm guessing you didn't really have a chance to like kind of quote unquote enjoy the time off. Cause like sometimes if you get injured, like maybe later in the season where you're like, I was going to hang it up in a couple weeks anyway, then you can kind of just chill and not really worry about cross training, just kind of do whatever, just start the break early. But where it landed in this season was kind of like a weird timing where you still want to maintain the fitness so that you can have some hopes of coming back and racing the rest of the year. So like, did you have any of that where you like kind of had enjoyed a slight break from running, or was it just like the whole time, just I need to get back to running and stay as fit as possible?
Yeah, my goals for 2022, it was like world indoors, world outdoors, Commonwealth Games in that order. And I think there was no room for interruption. And that was the upswing. Like that was the time in the season that I was like, this was my first, full altitude stint at training camp. We had awesome facilities and just like being with the team and taking advantage of that. To be sidelined, it was just like, shit, like,
yeah.
I'm here and I have everything I need. And now you're telling me that I can't really capitalize on that. And I think that's the toughest part, is just now kind of moving to like, elite athletes, kind of professional. It's like, when you have everything at your disposal, but now the performance isn't there, you're almost like, I did
what is this for?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And I think that's tough too, because at this level, it's now your job, like you want to perform, you want to every day show up and just be able to do, what you've kind of set out for yourself. So finding the kind of, I guess, silver lining, you have to always be able to see of like, okay, this is, I've had setbacks before and it's like, unfortunately this was in May. But I still looked ahead to the summer season and I thought Commonwealth Games, it's possible. Like, is it realistic? I don't know, but I'm just going to hold on to that so that every workout I do, it's like intentional. And I'm not just like killing myself for a couple hours.
Like, I'll suck it up and do this dumb exercise. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
What outside of, I guess with cross training, it's obviously low impact. You can do it for much longer, but outside of training, what's been, or at least in that time, what was like your rock, whether it's like Netflix, I don't know, cooking, perhaps?
That's tough. Yeah. I spent a lot of it in Flagstaff, but I think once you see the progression a little bit, like once I was able to begin running, like I think what I kept coming back to was like, I'll be okay again. And I think it's, once you are able to run 2 minutes pain-free and 5 minutes pain-free, like that's really what I was like hanging on to. And I think it's almost like you start over again and then you start appreciating what your body can do. So overall, it was just like health before everything else. And I guess for me, like just having friends, having teammates, having the support, like that's sort of like the grounding piece.
Absolutely. What do you have any other races planned this fall then? Or are you kind of just starting off fresh, kind of restarting?
Yeah, it's weird how it kind of came together because this would usually be the downtime coming off of a big summer. So I've now, like, I kind of see this as like, I'm just starting the season. We have the Canadian 5K champs in Moncton on September 11th. So that's going to be a road race. I'm really excited. I love a good 5K. So that will be the next one. And then heading into kind of September, October, I said I would never do cross country again, but we have nationals. Worlds is next year in Australia. And I was like, it's on the bucket list. So it'd be a really cool team to make. So who knows? I might grit out a 10K on the cross country course.
I like that. Yeah. I mean, get a free trip out of it, make a national team, sounds like a good way to do it to me.
It's always win.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I would try to, if I were in that position, I would absolutely try to find any opportunity to like clean up on like road race prize money or like, yeah, exactly like that. Like where could I like get onto a Canadian national team or get just a sweet trip out of a race, kind of a runcation type of thing. So I like that approach. So, wanted to also talk a little bit on your Olympic experience and, like it sounds like the way you're kind of approaching the injury too, like you're saying health first. You see yourself doing this for a lot longer, another Olympic cycle, I'm sure, and maybe beyond that as well. So how, like in your first Olympic experience then, was the approach just like really the satisfaction of being there and really enjoying it and soaking up the moment, or what were your expectations going into that race?
Yeah, I don't know if I was totally... I didn't know how kind of overwhelming in the best way possible it would be. I saw the difference between athletes who had been to either a games or 2 games before. They weren't phased. They were, arriving at the village. They were cool. They were calm. Like they went through before. They weren't, just trying to take it all in while focusing on the performance. So I think I'm just proud of the whole season, like Tokyo, the whole Olympics. Like it was just like, get to the start line, feel good, do what you've done, like just trust yourself, and just leave the track and know that like you will now be an Olympian forever. And regardless of what happens, like that was the best performance I had on that day. But the culmination, all of 2021, the performances I had to get to that point, I think was much more sort of representative, I guess, of my development as an athlete and just the accomplishments. I think the Olympics was a bit of the icing as opposed to the absolute end goal. Like my season was to run the Olympic standard. It wasn't to make the Olympic team. It was to see like how close can I get to 15:10. And I did. And then I ran it a few times. And then it was like, okay, like this is possible. But it was never an ultimatum that, you make Tokyo or bust. So
yeah.
Now that you make a team, you go to the Olympics, you experience it. It's like, okay, now I want another one, because now I know what it's like to perform on that stage. And then running World Indoors in Belgrade, and then going to Commonwealth Games in Birmingham. Like you're kind of like, now this is, the top level, and you're at the back of that. And then how do you work your way up? And I think that's where I'm at now in my career. It's just like a year out from the Olympics, 2 other major teams, and just trying to figure out like, how do you climb that way to the top?
Yeah.
How do you, it seems like your short-term goals you're very focused on, but obviously like everyone would love to make an Olympics, let alone like make a final or something like that. But how do you go from like having a short-term goal that you surpass to then like figuring out, you're like, okay, I'm running like 15:10s. Like what should my next goal be?
Yeah. The stepwise progression, it's tough. Like, and especially I think what for me was really difficult over the last like 6 to 8 months is this is the top. So everything up until now in my career, it was just like kind of moving up. So even from like, university into kind of more, national team focus, like there was always something kind of like a little bit bigger, but now you've made that thing that is, the ultimate. And it's like, well, frick, like I can only go backwards like at this point. So now you're here, and it's like these marginal gains, like just to be able to like trust yourself that you're able to be competitive at this level. And I think that for me has been a shift in believing that like you can get there. It's gonna be a lot of times that you're having to kind of like come back, or, injuries and the experience of being, not in the front pack of the race, but then you see it and you have that kind of championship experience. You're like, okay, now I want to make a final. And then it's like, now I want to make top 10. And then it's, you move to that next level.
Yeah, it's like one of the things that makes people really successful, but also can be like frustrating, is like every time you set a personal best or achieve a goal, like you're just like, oh, I could do better. I want even more. And sometimes like you have to like really, you have to like stop and like appreciate it for a second. But yeah, usually, you're like, oh wow, I'm really good. Like I hit my goal for like a few minutes, and then you're like, all right, what's the next thing? And it's, but that's what makes you keep getting better and, keep being successful in the long term. But it's kind of that just like endless, hamster wheel, so to speak, of always chasing the next big goal. I'm wondering, with your, all the time you spent as a student athlete and balancing, your training, but also being a student. And then now you're in this program where you're like actually traveling somewhere to focus on training, like training camps with the designated team, all that sort of stuff. So clearly it's working. You've seen some signs of it working. Like, do you think that is a big part of, like you're still new to the program, like you still have a ton of upside in how, like, as that continues to kick in and you spend more time just training in a dedicated fashion with resources and all that sort of stuff. I mean, it seems to be working so far. Do you see that being just a much easier opportunity for upside, kind of being in that like really focused training environment?
Yeah, I've thought about that a lot. I think especially during the time that I wasn't running is like, I basically trained in 2021 solo. And I wouldn't say I did it by myself because I had great friends and I had, my coach was still helping me out. But you're showing up to the track a lot by yourself. So when I joined the team last September and moved to Boston, I knew that this was going to be a totally different experience. I always think about like the strength in the herd. Like you have now teammates who are all capable of what you are. So you're not setting the pace. You're showing up and you have so many people who can push you through these sessions. And I think that's been a really neat experience because I haven't had that sort of team environment since university. And just that focus, like your day is designed around your training sessions. So the morning session, you wake up, you have your breakfast, you have your coffee, you head out by 9:30, 10, you're home by lunch. And then, you're just chilling kind of for the afternoon until, either you have treatment or then you head to the gym and you do your doubles. So it's the lifestyle is something I never thought I'd be doing this. And I just see it as a really unique time. Being 29 now, I'm, carving out the next 2 years till 2024 and just to really go all in and see what I can do with this. And I think in terms of the personal best and just to go off of what you've said with, always trying to achieve that next level. I think every time that I do run a PB, it's like, I might never run faster. Like I kind of accept that. And I think it just allows me to realize, like, appreciate like what we're doing right now. Like this is the goal. Like I've already kind of achieved the thing that I've wanted to do. And now it's just like living it out. Like how far can I take it? But not making it an all or nothing, because I think as an athlete, there's so many pieces that are out of your control. Looking at Paris 2024, like there's so many things in my life that can happen between now and then. Yeah. And of course it's incredible. And that, that's what I'm shooting for. But in the day to day, that's my focus. Like, what am I doing every day? And am I enjoying myself in that?
Yeah. I really like that perspective. Yeah. Just looking at it as all upside, not, like detriment if you don't keep pushing the boulder up the hill. So I like that.
So obviously like training in a group has been very positive. Do you wish that you had that earlier on in your career, or are there some things you learned from solo training that training in a group wouldn't necessarily give you?
I would say, there is definitely so many advantages that come from having a team. In Canada, there's no professional groups. Like that wasn't an option. And I never considered moving to the US. So right there, it was just like, probably not. Once I graduated, I moved to a different city in London, Ontario. I was just kind of finishing up school as well. And I remember there was kind of a point where I'm like, am I going to continue? Like, am I going to continue competing? I knew I would always enjoy running, but it got to that point where I wasn't enjoying going for workouts. It was just more of like, sort of, it wasn't something I look forward to in the day. And obviously in that moment, you're just like thanking yourself. Now it's just like, oh my gosh, like that could have been, the fork in the road between not knowing that you would make the Olympics and, in that moment, just kind of feeling sorry for yourself that it was cold and rainy and you had to get out for another workout. But the ebbs and flows. And I think you do gain strength from running within yourself. And I think that's something that just the sport teaches us is all those important pieces of like being in your own head and, having your own thoughts and not, in terms of distraction, just kind of blocking things out and doing something hard, like working hard at something and not always having success. I think that's like a life lesson in everything. So, I think the enjoyment aspect and obviously at this level, like I got this opportunity to do this and you go for it. So
speaking of moving to the US, what is any like culture things that are, London, and it's not very far from Boston. It's right across the US border. So it's kind of like all the same thing, I'm assuming. But any like culture shock or weird like American norms or anything like that? And I guess also moving from a smaller, town and growing up in a smaller town to moving to Boston is a big transition as well. So yeah, curious what you observed coming to the US.
Definitely, yeah. The transition to a big city, that like came from a really small town. Lucknow is like 1,200. Moving to Kingston for university, that was already a big shift. And then to London, it was, a bit bigger than that. So I really just didn't know, like at any point in my life, that I'd be living in a bigger city. And Boston, luckily, feels like, just because of the climate, it's familiar to like a Canadian sort of context, and just with, the seasons, being on the ocean, I think is really special. So that's something I do like, being on the East Coast. But there are, it's just subtle differences that you kind of like every day, you're just like, oh, that's different. But I didn't notice until I came back home. And I started then realizing like, okay, we do talk differently, and just like small town sort of like vibes versus in Boston. So it's more fun than anything. But I do think it is just a different way of life overall. There's been some hoops that I've had to jump through a little bit to make that move.
For sure. How do you say the word, trying to get some accent pulled out here. How do you say the word of the game that kids play where they chase each other around and, touch each other and someone is it? How would you pronounce that game?
Tag.
Oh, so
okay,
that's not too bad.
That was kind of in the middle. That wasn't like a full like tag or I don't even know. So it's kind of in the middle. Okay. Just wanted
like
to test that one.
You're an honorary like Wisconsinite. It's not too horrible.
Yeah. I've been practicing. Yeah. The flag stuff. I got a lot of
flag stuff.
Was bugging me. Yeah, for that. But it's funny because we have like Síofra's from Ireland and Sarah's from Great Britain. So I think I sound the most normal. They have actual accents, and I just have like something slightly different from what's in Boston. So right. Somehow I'm the one that's usually getting teased. So anyways.
Speaking of teasing, Millie left us some notes, and she wanted us to ask about your type in men.
Oh gosh. Okay.
Well, I don't know where this is going, but I'm excited to get there.
Well, first, I wouldn't trust Millie. She's not. I don't know if she would be on my side or not. But no, they do bother me about this quite a bit. I just happen to be the only person on the team that's not in a relationship. So everybody has been pretty long-term relationship. So, and just, I guess I'm like the foreign exchange student essentially, but we did make references. I was trying to give a description, and it wasn't a very good one. And I said a mix between Draco Malfoy and Vin Diesel. So that was sort of the description. Yeah. And ever since, yeah.
So like break that down for me.
I don't know if I'm still like set on that, but I don't know, Draco Malfoy. Like I was always like, I think just growing up, he was pretty
like
cool.
Emo Draco Malfoy, like when he's like troubled kid at school.
Like slick hair back. Yeah. Like young Draco Malfoy.
Okay.
And specifically Harry Potter, like not just outside of, and
not just Tom Felton or whatever his last name is.
No. And then Fast and Furious, like Vin Diesel, Dominic in that context. I don't know. That was also just something growing up I had watched. So I think, I don't know if that's like totally accurate, but yeah. So they've bothered me about that.
I'm trying. Yeah,
I'm trying to picture it in my mind. I literally can't.
I can't either. Yeah, we need like the apps that do whatever, like gender swap and we need to like pick any two people and like what would their kid look like any two people, and then just put them together so we can see exactly what this person looks like.
Let's pay somebody on Snapchat to make a filter that, how there's like that Chad jawline, just make like a Draco Malfoy and Vin Diesel filter, and then we'll know.
Millie also wanted us to ask about Jack Harlow as well.
Okay.
I can tell if this is going to be positive or negative.
Anything in specific or just Jack?
No,
Jack
she just
Harlow.
Yeah. What do you think of the guy?
I wasn't a big fan until he came to the track at New Balance. That was in March. He did a concert.
Right.
There.
He performed at the opening, right?
He did. And we were walking. So we're backstage. So grand opening, new facility. We've kind of like, this feels like home for us, our locker room set up in there. So he was backstage. We got to be sort of in the lounge area, and he just walks on by. He's casual, whatever. And I was like, well, that's pretty cool. And then, starting to listen to the lyrics of the songs and stuff, and he throws in New Balance and different like models of shoes and stuff. And I'm like, all right, this is neat. So now he's like maybe like 50% of my running playlist. But it was really cool. And maybe Millie has something more to say about that. But I would say he would be maybe like his song.
A mixture of, maybe he's a mixture of Draco Malfoy and
absolutely not. No.
Oh, no. Okay. All right. I thought I misinterpreted where we were going.
No, I would not say that Jack would fit that mold, but seems like a cool guy. It would be cooler if he's from Boston, but he put on a great show.
How cool is that facility? It sounds like everyone that went there said it's just like an awesome atmosphere.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't been able to race there yet. They did the world record attempt with the yeah. So, I mean, having our own space, we never really had a locker room, even in university, college. So that alone, I think, has just been really cool. It's almost just like it formalizes the team, and just you can start practice in the winter times. It'll be nice to just hop on the track, do your strides, cool down. We have like hydrotherapy. So the different tubs, Alter G, which I was doing some work on. And then the research lab is directly across from us. So then you go hop on there, 3D gait analysis, and you're testing out the different shoes, and they're getting your feedback. And it's just, you're immersed, and you're there, and you're with people who are, behind the scenes that are like with you, kind of like watching what you're doing. And it's so cool. And I really don't take that for granted.
It's crazy because I feel like none of that really, like the really integrated experiences didn't exist even a decade ago. Like, yeah, there were groups that were well funded, but there weren't brands that were like literally building facilities around professional teams.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense, because then you can get like instant feedback on which shoes you run the best in, if your gait has any improvement areas, that sort of thing. And how often are you testing like prototype shoes just in normal training? Like when you're in Flagstaff even, are they like shipping you prototypes and you're running in them all the time? Or how much are you part of that product development process?
Yeah, I would say it seems to be sort of like seasonal drop. So I would say like summer, spring, fall, winter, like there's always kind of new shoes coming out. And depending on your distance, depending on the spikes, what they have developed, a lot of the carbon and foam has been tested and retested. We had 2 different spikes. They did different plates that were a bit like just based on fit. So we would finish a workout, and then you'd put one on either foot and kind of give feedback in terms of responsiveness and stuff. So it makes you feel pretty elite, which is cool.
That's super cool. Yeah. Going back to the Canada versus US piece. So college, university, like what's the difference in how athletic teams are? Because like in the US, athletic teams are like, that's kind of why people go to a school a lot of times. Like if you're a D1 athlete, like you're going there to be an athlete first and a student second a lot of times. Not so much in running, more so in other sports. But how does Canada, like in your experience and just in general in Canada, like how is that treated? Is it more student first, athlete second? Like how is that mindset different from the US?
It's student first, athlete second for sure. I don't know a school where, mind you, we say that about the football teams that, you know, they field a bunch of guys and they're there on scholarship and otherwise. But I don't think that's fair to say. And I think that stereotype is being broken as well. Any university across Canada, I think you can have an incredible experience. There's obviously more higher ranked universities, but we don't have the divisions like NCAA, and we don't have, you know, Ivy League, but we do have a number of top schools. Ontario happens to be the biggest province, so we have the most universities. And then college is sort of your diploma program, more hands-on apprenticeship style, like, but they also offer sports. So there's kind of two routes that you go. So we don't refer to college as university, that's separate. But the athletic experience, you know, you're still supported. Full ride is not an option, but what I think it does is, you know, you're still focusing on sort of like life outside of sport, and it's setting you up in a way that, you know, it's not just a system dependent student athlete. And not to say the NCAA doesn't have so many upside, like the resources are incredible, you know, just facilities alone and the support that these athletes have. The only kind of flip side to that, I think, is leaving that 4-year or 5-year time is, you know, is that setting you up for the next stage? And for me, making the decision, I didn't consider moving away. So I didn't really give much thought to it, but I honestly don't think I would have been ready to make that shift and go down to the States, because now having this experience at 18, I don't think I would have been ready for that. So, yeah, it's definitely different. And we have our Olympic team was, you know, the number of athletes that came through the Canadian system, that was really cool to see, because obviously we're taking advantage of the groups, and even just racing and competition, the US offers so much more. But I think we still have a lot of good athletes coming out of youth sports. Absolutely.
Yeah. And it doesn't hurt that you have a master's knocked out and you're set up in that way too for, you know, future after running, should you pursue a path, you know, related to that as well. So kind of works out pretty nicely.
I'm curious when you, so obviously you graduated and had a stint where you were like embracing the grind, and you had the thoughts of not continuing. When in your career was the first that you thought like you could pursue this professionally?
Not until last year. Not until last
Really?
year.
Really?
Yeah. No, I never thought about this. And I don't say that as like, oh, I never knew that I would be like good. No, like I never thought I would be doing this.
I mean, is that like a logical decision between how good you were at the time and like your prospects elsewhere? Or did you just like place it just astronomically out of reach?
It just wasn't a option. Like I kind of had a 5-year plan, and like even 2018, I moved to London and I had my life figured out. Like I was pretty happy. Everything was good. You know, you're in a relationship. Things were kind of all set up. I was close to home. I got my teaching degree after my master's. So like comfy, you know, the Olympics were kind of like in the back of my mind. But I was focused on sort of what I had set out, just based on my education and background. And then life happens, and then the world shuts down, and I'm like, okay, like I did not plan for this. And then, I think a lot of sort of like growth and maturity, and then a lot of like setbacks and sort of challenges that I had personally and professionally. And I think then I got to the point in beginning of the season, 2021, the Olympic kind of qualification period opened up, and it was like, I was just sort of like, let's see what I can do. And until I was named, I guess, to the team, then I kind of reached out to Mark, and I was, you know, I met some of the women. I went to Boston, did a bit of a trip before we flew to Japan. And I was like, okay, this could be something. And I just knew if it wouldn't work out, it would be okay. Like if this, if that experience wasn't, going to happen, then you can always come home. But I'm so thankful that I do have this opportunity and that I didn't, just stick to what I knew. But I took that sort of leap.
So was the original intent to train in conjunction with teaching, or still train, but like remain kind of with what you knew, as you said?
I would, stay in Ontario. With teaching, it is pretty geographical. So you stay within a school board, which doesn't provide much flexibility that way. But I didn't think about making running any further ahead. Like for me, it was always a one-to-one with, my school and my sports. So then eventually, like at this point, I just realized like I have my education now. And teaching in the traditional sense, I think I would love to work at a university. So even that has shifted a bit in terms of going through teachers college and just realizing like what level and where I would connect best with students. So that's changed. And it's just, I think like even within the year, like I kind of plan by like a month at a time almost. I can't really see much further than that. I have goals and sort of the objectives, but in terms of how I'm getting there, it's like, all right, like who knows what's, next month, maybe you have another injury or something, like hopefully not. But I leave that kind of aside and just focus on what I know at this point.
Previous to the change, I guess in lifestyle, did you plan further out than a month?
Yeah, like I would say like at that point, it's just, life looked, I would say, quite different at that point. And it's funny because I think I was actually less mature then, but I feel like I saw myself in a different way. I was like, I have everything figured out.
I'm hot shit. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like it was, very, I was an independent woman, just I have everything together. And now it's like, okay, now I'm in a whole other place and it feels like I'm just like going with the flow here. And sometimes it scares me a little bit. I'm like, oh my gosh, my friends are getting married and having kids. And I think that's kind of the classic, go through your 20s and everyone's sort of like at different stages and you're just trying to like, go the course of where you're at, but no regrets. And I think everything's going to happen as it kind of will. And that's, I think what my parents always say too, is just like, you can't have everything at once. Like there's going to be things that are going to come and go, and you have to just kind of take advantage of the opportunities that are available to you now.
For sure. Were there ever any,
Go ahead,
I was going to ask were there any other opportunities, like in terms of brands or other running groups or anything like that? Was there anything else in consideration, or was New Balance really in working with Mark was the one and only option?
Yeah, I'd been with New Balance since 2015. So, maybe it did me a bit of a disservice with negotiating contracts and just speaking with my agent. So Ray Flynn, he was like, well, you seem set. Like, this is sort of, we can look at other things and, but if you're committed to a brand, immediately that sort of focuses you. And I think for me, it was more important to have a team that I felt like I could really buy into and that they would accept me. So
for sure.
That I cannot place a value on. And I can't say enough how much that means to me to have a group of women and Mark as well leading us, just a solid sort of like foundation. And just like a lot of teams will be like, oh, it's like family, and it's like, okay, you say that, but like this is actually like family. And I knew that from the very first visit that I had. It was like, not how's running, it's like, how are you doing? And what's going on in your life? And the discussion was a lot about the person first. And I think I immediately gravitated towards that. And at that point, it wasn't really, whatever the contract was going to be like, I can make this work. But definitely that was a big piece.
Got it. So you've been with New Balance for a while. So how does are they typically doing like 3-year agreements, or is it year by year, or how has that been structured?
Yeah, I would say every athlete it's different. I would say depending on where you're at in your career, I guess up until then with Canada, it's totally different than New Balance Global. So now being based, my contract's in Boston. So yeah, depending on what you negotiate in that time period, I'm sort of between two, 5-year Olympic cycle and now 3 years. So I'm looking till 2024. And then it's a combination as well with your own sport federation. So Athletics Canada and the support there. But it's having that shoe company behind it. I think there's a lot of work that still needs to be done in terms of funding structure and professional sport, especially within track and field. More transparency. I think there's a lot that happens under the table, and it's sort of, even with the agencies and stuff too, it's just everyone wants their cut, and nobody eats if you don't eat. So at the end of the day, it's all, contingent on your performance, which is fine by me because, you have to have that. But then you ask questions about, injury exemption and pregnancy leave and, retirement after sport, how you're set up. But, there's a lot of people who are making, $6-figure $1 million contracts. And there's people who are just trying to figure out how to live in a new place and make ends meet. So I'm hoping we're moving in a good direction there, and there's more discussion about it. But that's all I have to.
I think we need more Canadians in the system then.
Yeah.
I'm curious. You mentioned transparency. I guess, coming from the point of view of an athlete, what does that look like to you? Providing more transparency in the sport, is that primarily around what contracts are worth? What does that look like?
Yeah, we don't talk about it, and I think even amongst the team, and I think it creates. It's the bad side of it. I would say everything about the sport I love, and now moving into this kind of professional world, it's the one thing that actually I think takes away from the experience, because now you're adding a monetary value to an athlete's potential and performance. So putting a figure to that, it immediately it objectifies you. You're now a commodity almost.
Basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you throw in, the social media part of it, and we become our own sort of business people mixed with nobody taught us how to do this, let alone, I had never seen myself in this position. So you're reframing things constantly. And then now you have people who are working for you, but you're not really sure, is it for the companies or is it, representing they have lots of athletes and you're one of them. But I think at the end of the day, you do look out for yourself, and the transparency aspect, I think, is I can look up what any NBA player makes. I can look up, but I have no idea when I step on the start line, what's everyone's story? How did everyone get to this point? And, how is everyone doing? And we just talked about that.
It is so interesting because running, I would consider a much more nuanced sport. Everyone, I'd say most people, if you're into the running scene professionally, you're also in it for the story. So like you said, it isn't just this random NBA player makes this much money. Do you think that should be the same for track and field, where you could also look that up, given that it's more nuanced?
I think if you want to call it professional sport, it has to be at least at the very, living salary. The issue, I think, is where is the responsibility? Is it on the national federation? Is it, solely based on these sponsorships that we have? And, we're not cyclists. We don't have 10 different sponsors that we're putting on our kits.
You're not NASCAR. Yeah.
Would love that. But the race uniform is pretty limited, and we're not going to be putting much more in terms of, we have our shoes. We don't have much more equipment than that. So I don't know if it makes sense that the responsibility is just on, New Balance and Nike and all these big companies, or if we need to be looking to our, national sport organizations. And where's the support? Like the government, like we recognize that as, professional sport. And then you make an Olympic team and there are a lot of perks that come with that, but you still you need money to pay rent. You can't, no amount of Lululemon gear that we get from the, or
you can't eat that.
You can't eat that, unfortunately. I'm sure it's biodegradable or something, but no, you can't. And I think that there should be some, discussion at least.
Where do you think the responsibility lies for either the discussion or kind of starting this?
I think it's going to come from athletes, and just because of the push, I think even seeing just leaders in the sport, a lot of the times it's coming from athletes who are willing to speak up. And we have small discussions with, groups of people that are sort of advocates for just even between men and women in sport. That has been over the years, even during my time, I think about equal distances in cross country was such a big topic in university. So it starts small and then it kind of goes big. But if you make enough noise, people eventually listen. And I think the more that we know, the less that people can do things behind, closed doors. And it's, you have to be able to say no. And that's what's hard is athletes you're looking out for yourself.
There's no
right?
voting. And there's no voting power really. What are you going to do?
Exactly. Yeah.
It's such a weird situation where you're restricted. There are governing bodies that could that basically, block things from being transparent, et cetera. But then they also block, but I guess there's not one centralized, NFL's a league, NBA's a league, there's one league. So then it's organized enough to the point where you can have that level of transparency. Running isn't like that. You have a bunch of different kind of, like you said, different, hands in the pot, taking cuts, whatever. But then the really shitty part is then they also block the being able to source your own brand deals and logos and all of that. If they restrict your ability to negotiate
mini monopoly.
It is. It's they restrict your ability to negotiate the one sponsor that you really need to have plenty of funds coming in because it's your job, your shoe sponsor. They restrict that. And then they also restrict you from getting outside brands and advertising outside brands too, based on jersey restrictions and all that sort of stuff. So it's blocking you from both sides. Whereas if they opened up one or the other, that would at least, make a big leap forward. But yeah, it's tough to know who the onus is on. And I don't know, I just think about it compared to the corporate world too. I mean, sport is different. I
was just thinking that.
But in the corporate world, it's the same thing. It's you could be sitting next to someone doing the exact same job and you're making 40% different amounts or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. And
that's kind of my next question, right? Is I think the biggest thing for tech has been people weren't comfortable, probably people older than 35 aren't super comfortable talking about their salary. Do you think in the running world, we're seeing a change where people are going to be more upfront about that, or is it going to take some larger effort?
Yeah, it's just I'm a year into this and it's hard for me to have enough perspective. I feel I'm it took me a year to just get to this point where I'm all right, I know how things sort of work. I know where the money's coming in. I know what deductions are made. I probably am not the person to answer that question. But in terms of discussion around it, I think if people are either fed up enough, or I see, in cases with, pregnancy. And I think I even look to the Canadian team, someone like Melissa Bishop, who I look up to. She now has 2 kids and, she's supported by Nike. And you see that as possible. And I think that's the piece that we need to have is the representation of I'm a mom, I'm an Olympian, and this is what I do for a living. I see a life outside of sport. This is not something that I picture for myself for, forever. So I think I have a different feeling towards it in terms of how am I setting myself up for the rest of my career.
Definitely. We could probably keep going down this rabbit hole all day, but we do have some. I was going to say we probably should go back to some more fun kind of closing type questions before we just keep going down, keep pounding this one to death.
I guess we were talking earlier about your career professionally, obviously seeing something outside of just sport and setting yourself up for it. I want to talk a little bit about what inspired you to pursue like working with a brand to build your own website.
Yeah, so it was a goal for 2022. I wanted a website and I didn't know exactly what that would look like. I was like, I've seen it done. I think it's cool. I'm terrible at online applications programs. So immediately I was like, I'm not going to like wiki, whatever builder, make this site. So again, Melissa Bishop, saw her platform and I was like, this is cool. And she gave me a contact. And from there it snowballed. And it just felt like, this seems like a lot for where I'm at. Like, do I really need this like whole platform? I'm kind of like jumping ahead of myself. But then I realized I was just like, this is like, it's like a portfolio. This is your resume. And sometimes I feel like you make those jumps and it opens sort of the doors to where, who you want to speak to. And it creates that sort of professional look and feel to go along with, where you can see yourself. So I think for me, it was just a place that I can have everything in one spot as opposed to just, Instagram, photos and captions, but more substance to that. And I think a way to showcase sponsorships as well as, sort of race schedule. And I will be adding in a more formal kind of long form biography as well. But where it goes, I'm not entirely sure. I try not to, you don't want to jinx anything in terms of, your career or anything like that too. But for me, the story, the background, coming from a really small town, making the Olympics last summer, like the support I received was overwhelming. And that just feels really special. Is like when I come home, it's just people recognize that. And I think it's unique in that case. And it just like, going to the US and being a Canadian on this team, it's something different that I feel like I want to bring forward and have a way of sharing that.
It's fall actually it's not fall yet. What am I talking about? I don't think it is. I don't know when fall officially starts. It's like later in the month or September, but Halloween season, I was at the store the other day and like Halloween stuff is out everywhere. So like, can you tell us what's your favorite Halloween costume that you've ever put together or worn?
Oh boy. Okay. Appropriate or not? No, just kidding.
Give us one of each.
I'm always like, I feel like I have such great ideas and then the execution doesn't really nail, but I've been a panda. It is my favorite animal, but I have done that a couple of years and it works out pretty well. I just, put the paint on and do like little space puns. But, I'm just trying to think in previous years what I have dressed up as. High school, it was like nothing to be proud of. I feel like I've deleted those albums.
I was just going to say, what's the worst outfit?
Not good outfits. I don't really have specific examples. It's usually the time of year where I feel like, especially like in your high school years, it's just like, how minimal can you like dress? And then it's sort of like you take something and then it's like, what's the like sexualized versions of that? Yes. Which is just like the one time of year that you probably should be showing up to like your friend's house then. But this inspires me because I do want to come up with something a bit more creative, but it's tough because you go to the party and you don't know if you want to show up with like the full face of paint and like something like
what's the vibe
scary, or if you're just going to be like a bunny again. So it's like, what's the vibe?
So what about I'm looking at a particular picture of you doing a pop. That sounded really bad. That was a bad start to that. Halloween costume of a pop star. Do you remember what one that one was?
Britney Spears, absolutely.
Yes, that's good. It like the side by side. That's very good. It's pretty. I don't know, pretty close. I like it. Were you a fan of her? I mean, that she's our age. I mean, Adam's a little bit younger than us, but she's our generation's pop star. I don't know if Adam might be too young to have listened to her.
Come on. I remember Britney.
Were you a fan of her back in the day?
I went to a cafe once as a kid and the barista told me that I looked like Britney Spears. And I was like, wow, like that is so cool. So then I think I had it in my mind. I'm like, wow, like I look like a pop star. And that's my celebrity. Now I don't think I would love to be have that kind of like reference. I did watch your Netflix documentary and it's a lot.
Bizarre.
So yeah, I don't think I'll do a remake of Britney, but who knows?
That's probably the confidence trip of all time. Like getting told when you're younger, you look like a pop star. Like I'd live off that for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll fire another one. How long have you played piano?
As long as I can remember. I know that there's photos and I'm like, I couldn't touch the floor. So if that was, I think kindergarten, we had like taken some lessons. And then by like grade 8, you're kind of doing the levels, but at some point I was like, I'm going to quit. And then you're like pretty close because you go through like the conservatory. And then I ended up doing the exams and stuff, but I haven't really come back to it in the last couple of years. So I think that's something coming home. I'm like, I should probably dust it off a little bit, but it is cool to have. I think it balances you a little bit to have sort of like a, artistic and athletic and an academic. I think you need those three in some balance.
Definitely. If you were to pick it up again right now, like what would be your go-to type of music? Are you playing classical or like pop renditions? What are you playing?
Good question. Yeah. Covers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Some classical pieces. I did have one, I can't think of it right now, but actually Ludovico Einaudi, I don't know if you've heard, he has like classic songs that are like even on Spotify, a lot of people listen to, just like running and stuff. He's in like a lot of movie tracks. So
okay,
I ended up somehow downloading a lot of his songs at one point when I was at Queen still. So I should be able to just like pick that up, but then you're always a little bit hesitant. It's like running the first race of the season and you're like, this could really not go well.
This could go horribly.
I'm like, luckily, some keyboards, just throw in the headphones so nobody has to like listen to that. But it's a little intimidating for sure.
It's an interesting mixture for the running Spotify with Jack Harlow. What else is on the running playlist?
Everything. I found this like UK London rap. So I usually like when I'm traveling, I figure out like I'll either Google like the location and just, or not Google, but search in Spotify, like just see, if I'm heading to Birmingham, like if they have like playlist specific, and then somehow it just like leads me down a rabbit hole and I end up with like an entire rap playlist. And I'm like, I didn't know I liked this. And it's, I would say, very diverse music taste.
That's a good plan. I'm going to start doing that next time I travel. I think I have one left, Chris, if you want.
Okay. I got one more too. So go ahead. You go for it.
Okay. So you're 20. Oh, you said you're 29. Do you identify more with Gen Z or Gen X?
I'm actually 28. I don't know why I said 29. I'm turning 29 in December. So I'm a 93. So I'm in my 29th year, I guess. I would say like, what would be the stereotypes that you would put with those? Because then I can easily put myself in one category.
Oh, it's stereotypes of Gen Z versus, okay. Well, millennials are, I would say, you will find more Disney adults that are millennials. Gen Z, God, it's really hard to describe Gen Z has really weird humor, like to the point where if you're a millennial, you will likely think that Gen Zs are like not very funny because the humor is in like bite-sized pieces and it's just like off the walls. It's really hard to describe without do you use TikTok or YouTube as your primary media source?
Neither. I think.
So you're like a boomer.
Exactly. I just skipped ahead. I would say like I'm a 90s kid. Like I'm just thinking in terms of like what we grew up with, music taste, and just I would say like I embraced the like pop star, like Britney, and like the high-waisted jeans, and like we had the cuts as kids, like the classic like mushroom cut.
Yeah.
And like I think the breaking like the 97s and up, like now I make these teams and there's actually like 2000 babies, and I'm like, now this is different. Like you have another language. Like you use
That's
words.
Gen Z. Yeah.
Yeah. So not that.
Not that.
Okay. Wanted to ask, actually, this one I think was from Millie as well. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Thoughts on a minimalist lifestyle? Is this something that you practice yourself?
Okay, this is the best one. I feel like this is something I'm very passionate about. I use the quote, I'm like, I have everything I need and nothing that I don't. But I do love the idea of just like eliminating any sort of things in your life that don't bring you value or joy or purpose. And I think in a material form, in like relationships, in everything, like just filter it out so that you have exactly like kind of your priorities and like your necessities. I just came back from a canoe trip as well, portaging. So like that makes it like very visual. Like when you have this like tiny bag that you have to pack what you need for the weekend. And it's like, I can live on this. Like, why do I have everything else?
Yeah.
You know, and we go on these trips and, you know, you get your New Balance shipment for the month and you're like, oh my gosh, like there's no way that you're going to wear this much stuff. And like, it seems like a great problem to have. But I think when you fill your life with more stuff, it takes away from the things that are like meaningful. So I kind of apply that to everything. And I think that could be sort of something that I would want to be able to put forward in terms of change. Is just, you know, when you're thinking about even like the climate environment, it's just, we don't need so much stuff. And I think simpler can actually be better. And I see that in so many different ways of just, you know, when things are just cluttered and you're just, you know, working to live and everything's just like busy, life sort of happens. So my apartment is sort of designed like that. My life is sort of designed like that. My relationships, everything is just like, it's refined in that way. And it's just like sort of no noise. Yeah.
Yeah. I felt like I was kind of minimalist in my approach. And then now I, you know, recently moved into a house, and the more stuff you have, the more stuff that breaks. And it's like, yep, I guess I didn't follow my own stance on that one. But I guess I got to have a place for future baby to sleep. So there's that too. But no, absolutely. I mean, you really don't need like 95% of the stuff that you have. Like you really don't. So I like that.
My favorite vacations are when I'm in the middle of nowhere with like barely like enough for like a single day and just like re-wearing shit.
Yeah. I mean, Adam, you probably don't remember this because you're too young, but like back in the day when you like when there weren't cell phones and like it was so nice, you could go on vacation. Before cell phones, you fucker. You could go on vacation and you wouldn't have to have cell service ever. You wouldn't have to have people blowing you up with problems or anything. You're just out there. But now it's just getting away. Like I think that's like doing some sort of outdoors trip. Like how remote was this canoe trip? Were you able to like kind of be off the grid, so to speak?
Yeah, it's northern Ontario, like in Algonquin. So depending on the lake, we don't have reception. which it poses a bit of like a safety risk for sure. But I kind of like that a little bit. It's like, all right, like if shit goes down, like we're
in trouble.
And luckily I chose, five good people to go with, all friends from Queens, which is really special to me that we've kept that going over the last 10 years. Yeah. But, no, I think everyone should have that experience. And it's kind of sad that we have to like turn off our phones and like have that like deliberate time. Like, I think every day you should be able to like, that's what I love about going for a run. It's just like, leave it and just be in your own space. Because the messages, the emails, everything will still be there. It's like, you can come back to that. But,
exactly.
Yeah, I think camping and, just being in the wilderness, it's like, it's good for the soul.
For sure. Yeah. Running is one of those rare, like one of the few things left where you cannot be reached like by your phone, like throughout any given day, assuming that you don't take your phone with you on the run, of course, but it's like one of the few things left that's like quiet time, just like you time.
That's why I stopped using my Apple Watch on my runs. Cause like
one less technology. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Just run free. I love that. That's probably a good place to wrap up. It's a little bit of advice for the listeners to try to be a little more minimalist, Yeah, I like that. Anything, any other words of wisdom, messages, anything you want to plug, anything to close out?
Can't think of anything in particular. No. I think we talked about quite a bit, but I'm excited to go back to Boston.
Absolutely. I mean, good old USA, the greatest. Well, yeah, I was going to say the greatest place on earth, but I don't know about that all the time.
slowly crumbling. Just.
But no, it'll be fun. We'll be following along with all the successes and some races that you do the rest of this year, and then it's gonna be fun to watch the team compete, New Balance team compete, especially come indoor season. I think some big things are happening. Got a really good team over there shaping up, and everyone seems to be kind of firing on all cylinders. So it's fun to watch.
Yeah, no, it'll be exciting for sure.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.